Hello everyone and welcome to Ukulele Underground University. My name is Aldrin Guerrero, joined by Mr. Aaron, the voice Nakamura. Say what's up, Aaron.
What's up?
And to Mr. Kahai, the legend Fergan. Say what's up.
What's up?
And the three of us would like to present to you Ukulele 102, week number 2. Alright, so week number 2 is Arpeggios and finger picking. So if you're that person who has been kind of wondering how to progress into a more finger picking style, this is going to be for you. But before we get into it, let's just kind of take a look back at what we did for week 1. So on week 1 we covered warm-up, so warming up your ukulele, and we talked about how important it is to warm up your ukulele. We had our week 1 goals, which is basically to be able to play the exercises that were provided. So for those of you who are on UU Plus, if you guys downloaded those exercises, that would be awesome, and to see if you can play those exercises. So let's go over one of those exercises right now. So we're going to go over exercise number 3. So exercise exercise C. Okay. So for exercise C, it's basically let's do it on the C string. I like to do the exercises on week 1 on the C string, only because it allows my fingers to bend all the way up to just kind of get it through, so I get a nice stretch. So the point of warm-ups on the ukulele is to stretch our fingers. So our fingers, pointer finger is going to be on the 2nd fret, middle finger is going to be on the 4th fret, ring finger is going to be on the 5th fret, pinky finger is going to be on the 7th fret. So 2, 4, 5, 7, like so. All right, and the exercise sounds like this, and I'll break down the notes here. It sounds like this. So what I'm doing is I'm doing a 0 2 0, and then I'm playing 4, and then going back to the 0 2 0, then 5, then 0 2 0, then 7, then 0 2 0, 5, 0 2 0, 4, and then 0 2 0. So pretty much after every 0 2 0, we're gonna go 4, we're gonna go 5, 7, then 5, then 4, then 0 2 0. Okay, so it's gonna come in on the upbeat of 4. So I'm gonna count 1 2 3 4, da 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 da. So we are playing the 2nd fret on the downbeat of 1. So it goes 1 2 3 4. Ba 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 ba. One more time. 1 2, ready, and ba 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 ba. If you want a bigger stretch, just leave your fingers on there, just hovering on top of the strings if you want. Ready? 1 2 3 4. 2 3 4. So to get a nice stretch, what we can do is we can play it also on the E string and then the A string. All right, so let's go to the E string. Ready? 1 2 3 4. A string, 2, ready, go. So if you can play that, and if you can play the other 2 exercises that we showed you last week, then you are definitely meeting your goals so far. So that's your week 1 goal, is to be able to warm up your fingers using the exercises provided. You can kind of mix it up and make your own exercises, but if you don't want to do that, if you want to just kind of stick to the exercise that we gave you, that's fine as well. That's gonna get your fingers moving and get your fingers stretched. All right, and one last one, we're just gonna do the shake, just like how we did last week. Remember I said if there's one thing that we can do, or if I only have time for doing one warm-up, it's the shake. So 1 2 3, done. So just like that, my blood is pumping through my fingers and I'm ready to face whatever we're going to be doing on Ukulele 102 week number 2. Alright, so we're approaching arpeggios and finger picking for today. So our week 1 goal, like we said, was to to be able to warm up and understand the importance of warming up of our ukulele. So now that we're warmed up, our week 2 goals are understand what makes an arpeggio and how to go outside that box to extend it. So you're probably wondering, why are we doing arpeggios again? I remember Ukulele 101, we already went over arpeggios. What else is there to learn? Well, arpeggios is very, very, very vast. And I was kind of thinking about this myself too, that like, why are arpeggios so, so important? Well, let me give you a few examples to how important and how versatile arpeggios really are. So when we strum our ukulele, for example, we just do a simple C, F, and G strum. Okay? So an arpeggio, as we went over on Ukulele 101, is just spelling out the chords. So Alright, so when we're strumming our ukulele, so going back to that, when we're strumming our ukulele, we're basically doing that very rapidly. Because when we strum, we're going and just really fast. And what is that? We're just spelling out that C chord. And we're spelling out the F chord. And we're spelling out the G chord. And it's spelling out the C chord. But what makes arpeggios sound the way that they are is when you play them slowly, you can hear every single note that's associated with the chords that you're playing. So, or you can even do just from top to bottom. So when we strum our ukulele, it's basically just a rapid arpeggio that we're doing, because we're not playing the strings all at one time, we're playing the strings rapidly. Okay, so that's why we actually do arpeggios every time we strum our ukulele. And why would you want to extend it and go outside the box? Well, if you've ever heard of guitar players such as James Taylor, the Beatles, and Eric Clapton, and many other artists, they're basically just using arpeggios in a way so that they paint those chords for you in a more colorful and in a more beautiful way. For me, I first kind of started using arpeggios when I was listening to great ukulele artists such as Troy Fernandez with the with Ka'au Crater Boys. There's a song that we did here on Ukulele Underground called Guava Jam, and it goes like this. So I didn't notice this when I was younger, when I was figuring out this song, but what it is basically a combination of a melody line, which is and what Troy Fernandez is doing is he's accompanying that with arpeggios. So when you do there's the obvious arpeggio, but he's doing really short bursts of arpeggios going down. So he's still keeping that same melody line of, but he's adding some arpeggios in there to kind of keep the groove going. So same thing with the G7. He's playing an arpeggio there as well. So arpeggios are pretty much everywhere. When you hear those guitar players like I mentioned, Eric Clapton, James Taylor, the Beatles, and and many others, Cat Stevens, you name it. If they're doing the fingerstyle picking, they are basically doing an advanced version of arpeggios. So for those of you folks, and I know I get a lot of emails and get a lot of comments on this, those of you folks who are interested in tackling fingerstyle picking on the ukulele, arpeggios will be the first step towards that goal. Okay, so if your goal is to do that, be able to play fingerstyle picking, arpeggios is your first step. All right. So yes, did you want to add anything?
I think it's I was gonna say too. I think it's useful like to learn arpeggios if you want to solo too, right? Like
Yes.
because it's a pretty easy way to get into soloing. Like it's instead of thinking about individual notes and like what notes you're trying to hit, you can just play chords.
Right,
basically.
right. Because the notes and the chords are basically the safest notes that you can go to. If the background is already playing chords, if I'm playing, like, for example, an F chord, any one of these notes right here is going to be the right chord. All right, so that's a great way to kind of do solos. Is just play the notes from the chords, and you're basically doing arpeggios. All right, and our next goal, of course, is to be able to play the exercises provided. So just like week 1, we're going to be providing you folks with some new exercises you can try out at home, and your goal for this week is to be able to play those exercises. So to understand what makes an arpeggio and to be able to play the exercises provided. All right, so I've already kind of explained to you folks briefly what an arpeggio is and why you should be learning them on the ukulele, but let's dig into it right now. But before that, do you guys have any questions so far?
People are just getting into the chat.
Oh, nice, nice.
On UU Plus. I don't know about YouTube. YouTube might have some questions.
Okay,
but-
do we have any questions from YouTube? Oh, by the way, we are live, so if you folks have any questions or anything at all, we have a live chat provided, and you guys can ask your questions over in the live chat, where also Ukulele Underground Plus members have a live chat that is exclusive for UU Plus. You can ask your questions there as well. So Aaron is manning the YouTube chat, and Kaha is manning the UU Plus chat, and actually both of them are on both chats. So fire away, and if you have any questions, we'll get them. They'll relay it over to me, and I'll answer those questions as best as I can.
Yeah, there's a little delay though, so like it just might take a little while for us to get your questions.
Okay, so for now, let's just move on to the next part, which is the first part of the arpeggio lesson. So what is an arpeggio? An arpeggio is a chord played using single notes in ascending or descending order. All right, so when we play, we're seriously going from low to high. So the lowest note of our ukulele, spelling out that C chord, we're basically going ba da 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 da. We're getting higher, and then we get back down. So that's ascending and descending order. Arpeggiate in Italian means play on a harp. So if you're more of a visual person, you can kind of visualize a harp and you're just playing the notes on the harp. So when a harp player would play, they would just pluck the individual notes, either ascending or descending, spelling out that chord. All right. So that's just for those of you folks who are like, what is an arpeggio? I hear you say it all the time, but what is that? That's exactly what it is. All right. So let's break down the C chord like how we just did. So 0 0 0 3. All right, and the lowest note on this chord is the open C string. Now followed by the open E, then the open G, then the A string 3rd fret, which is the C note. So we have C, E, G, C in ascending order. So we're going up from the lowest to the highest of that chord. So for those of you folks who are kind of confused as far as ascending and descending, we're spelling out the chords. So this is the chord, the C chord, and all I'm doing is I'm playing the lowest note on that chord to the highest note on that chord, and I'm just spelling out the chord for you folks, which is C, E, G, C, G, E, C. If I'm going ascending back to descending. All right, so if we play them in ascending order, we would have C, E, G, C. And if we play them in descending order, we'd have C, G, E, C. But in going down instead of going up, all right? So if we were to, sorry about that. If we were to play just normal like arpeggios, we can use that into out technique that we've learned in Ukulele 101, which is thumb on the C and G string, pointer finger on the E and the A strings. So you can do thumb, pointer, thumb, pointer, thumb, pointer, thumb, pointer. from there you'd already be playing arpeggios. So you can play your F chord too. G chord, C chord. So for those of you who want to play fingerstyle, you can do it already. You can just play the chords that you already know, and just pretty much pick in ascending or descending order. Okay. Next, so into-out arpeggios. Like I said, the into-out technique can be used for ascending arpeggios, and this actually gives an advantage to high G ukuleles. Why is that? It's because when we do the into-out technique, our inner strings are actually the low strings and our outer strings are the higher strings. So the high G users will get that nice, that nice advantage of the in-to-out technique. If you are a low G user, you would basically just do from top to bottom because it goes from the lowest string to the highest string. But with high G ukuleles, we have that special technique of using in-to-out arpeggios, which is alternating your thumb and pointer to play the lower notes and then eventually get to the higher notes, which is the notes on the outside of your string. So the inside strings and then the outside, in to out. The layout of the strings lets you alternate between thumb and index for the in to out. Okay, nice and simple. So also that works with out to in arpeggios as well. So if we have out to in, we're going descending order. Okay, going from the highest note to the lowest note. So if you want to imagine, or if you want to picture in your head like a harp, so it's basically just like a harp. We're just kind of playing those individual notes that spell out our chord. All right. So any questions so far? That's just the basics.
So Brenda asks,
Yes.
Can you explain the difference between arpeggios, vamps, and riffs?
Okay, arpeggios, like I said, is just like in ascending order. Vamps are turnarounds for music, and riffs are tiny little melodies, short bursts of melodies. So there are actually three totally different things. Arpeggios is you can use it either as a background thing, as a rhythm thing, or it can also be used as a melody thing. Whereas turnarounds is basically just a way to bridge two gaps. Okay, so vamps are turnarounds to bridge two gaps. For example, you have two verses and you want to separate the two. You will have a turnaround in between to separate the two verses. Riffs are just tiny little melody lines to accompany the song. Right.
Arpeggios are like is a technique,
Yeah.
like specifically,
Mhm.
and then vamps and riffs are like parts of songs,
Yeah.
or like terminology for
Yes.
parts of songs.
Yeah. Good question though. It's good
Yeah.
to know.
I think it's also important to note that with that C chord
Mhm.
that you're playing or using the arpeggio for,
Uh-huh.
you had two C notes.
Yes.
And so like the difference between them is that one was a low octave C,
Yeah.
right?
One was a low C, one was a high C. Very good observation.
So and then like that's something that you'll see more frequently with other
Mhm.
chords too,
Mhm,
too.
mhm,
And just to be careful of which note you're playing.
Yeah.
If you want to go in a certain order, right?
Right.
So.
Okay. So, any other questions before we move on?
Okay, wait.
I don't want to seem like I'm going too fast for some people, but this is basically just a run through of what we did last at Ukulele 101. This is just the basics, so I wanted to just kind of go over these really quick, just to remind you guys what arpeggios are.
So Leanne
how
brought
to
up
play them. Yeah.
Leanne brought up a good point too,
What's that?
and she kind of said like that your left hand
Mhm.
determines the notes, right? Like
Yes. Yeah.
So wouldn't that mean that it changes what is low to high or high to low? Don't you have to adjust for that?
You can, but like I said, when you do the into out technique, you're basically mapping out your strings from low to high. So for the most part, unless you have, you know, like a stretch like this, it'll still be from the lowest note to the highest note as long as you follow the into out pattern.
So it's like it's pretty safe to stay.
Yeah, it's pretty safe
with those.
Yeah.
And I think like even if you're not playing the notes exactly low to high,
Yeah.
if they're the chord, right, it should sound good, or it should sound connected.
Yeah,
with
it
the
should
song.
sound. It should still sound good, regardless if you're going low to high, like a high said. As long as you're playing or you're still spelling out the the notes in the chord, it should still sound really good. And that's a very good question because that goes to the next part of our lesson.
I think into out and out to in is just like what's really common.
Yeah,
used,
that's just the basics, just to kind of get that harp sound or that harp kind of feel, because that is what it is. To arpeggiate is to play on a harp.
Yep.
So, any other questions?
So I think that was all from the UU Plus, but
Anybody else from the YouTubes have questions? No? Okay. Moving on. So extended arpeggios. So this is kind of the meat and potatoes of things right here. So ascending C chord is, we just explained to you, C, E, G, C. But we can actually extend the arpeggio. So just like C, E, G, and it went back to C, we can extend that arpeggio and it would loop. So C, E, G, C, E, G, C, E, G, C, E, G, etc. So if we find a higher E, because it's still ascending, then we can extend the arpeggio. So for example, where is a higher E than C? We got C here, we got D here, and then this is our E note on the A string 7th fret. So if we played, that would still be part of the arpeggio. So the arpeggio doesn't limit you to just doing into out techniques or out to in techniques. So this is kind of where we're gonna go past the knowledge that we did on Ukulele 101. So you can do. So now we have a 6th note or a 5th note arpeggio. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, then back down. You can even extend it to a 6th note arpeggio. So what is the next note? We have C, E, G. So we did C, then we did a higher E. Next we need a higher G. So a higher G would be here. So if we did. And you can do that with pretty much any chord. So my favorite one to do that to is my G chord. So here, let's just take a look at the notes here. We have G, we have D, we have G again, and then we have B on the A string. So here's the different notes here. We got D, we got G, we got B. So D, G, B, or G, B, D, however you want to take a look at it. But those are the 3 notes that pretty much make up our G chord. And what I like to do is I like to go to that A string 5th fret. And you guys see me do this a lot on Aloha Friday Live Jams. So we can do. So what I'm doing is I'm doing an into out technique, but I'm extending it by 1 note over on the 5th fret. Why am I doing that note on the 5th fret? Because that is a D note. So we have D, G, G, B, D. And what I'm also doing is I'm adding a little bit of technique in there. So I'm doing a pull off on that A string 5th fret on the D. We can even do a hammer-on combination. You do. So it already sounds super fancy, but all we're doing is we're doing that basic arpeggio, but just extended by 1 note. Okay? So you can actually experiment with this and get so much different combinations. When you're playing your F chord, you have your C, F, A, or A right here, and then the next C is your A string 3rd fret, as we learned from our open C chord. So you can do. So just kind of fool around with the with the right hand, because we don't necessarily have to stick to the in to out technique. We can then start thinking about the melody line. So if my melody, I want it to be, so you can do. So I'm starting off with that arpeggio, and then I'm gonna do that melody line that I thought of. So my melody line is, so we can do. So here's the basic arpeggio. I'm just going in ascending and descending order. And I'm gonna add my little riff there. So it sounds extremely fancy. For those of you folks who who really want to learn fingerstyle picking, it's as easy as starting off with your arpeggios and then just adding extensions to them, and it'll already make your ukulele playing that much more complex. For those of you who are maybe playing your A chord, maybe A and B minor, you can do. And I'm not doing anything fancy in particular, I'm just adding the extra note. So here, I'm adding that C sharp note, which is my lowest note here on the C. So A, that's my A arpeggio, the into out arpeggio. And then adding that C sharp, so extended arpeggio. Okay, so don't be afraid to step outside of the box either. So don't limit yourself to just the notes on the on the arpeggio, because later on you're going to be learning some chord extensions as well. So with chord extensions, we can use arpeggios for finger style picking. But before we move on to this, is there any questions? I want to stop there as well, because this is going to get a little bit more hard here.
There isn't a question, but there's a couple of our members who are saying that using their pinky seems a little hard to do the pull off. So is that just something that they should work
it's
on?
just a little bit of practice, and the exercises later on that we give you has a little bit of a pinky exercise that can get you folks to move your pinky a little bit more.
I think in 101 too, we gave pull-off exercises, right? And then that we even talked about like using your pinky, because you never know when you're gonna do it.
Yeah, remember we said that the most important thing is to warm up before playing. So for those of you folks who are having a hard time with that pinky hammer on, might need to revisit your worm, or perhaps your spider, perhaps, and that'll give you a little bit more strength on that pinky. So it's all in sequence. That's why we started off in week 1 showing you folks warm-ups and ways that you can stretch your fingers. So if your pinky finger isn't too fit to do those hammer-ons and pull-offs, then you might want to revisit some of the exercises that we gave you on week 1, and also some of the warm-up stuff that we gave you on week 1.
Yeah. And it seemed like for extending the arpeggios, you kind of have to know what notes go into a chord, right?
Yes.
And it could also help if you know your notes on your fretboard too, to know where it is. So if you need help with that stuff,
yeah,
right?
we have a video called Mastering Your Fretboard. So by now, I think I mentioned it on Ukulele 101 that a great thing for you guys to do on the side is to memorize all the notes on your on your ukulele, even if you just memorize the first 5. So my advice on that would be to memorize the first 5 frets, and then memorize the next 5 frets. Okay, and then maybe that's it. Like for me, 12 frets. So maybe you can do 6 and then another 6. But for me, I really only know the first like 10 frets. And here I just kind of have to guess. So off of the 10th fret, it'll kind of tell me what the 11 and 12th fret are. So if you break it down that way, or maybe you can even do 4, 4, and 4. So if you do it down like that, and you break it down into 2 or 3 different pieces, it'll help you learn your fretboard a little bit more. So in this case, if I'm doing arpeggios with F or or G, if I'm doing extended arpeggios, then the next note for my arpeggio isn't actually that far off. Okay, so for example, my G arpeggio, I'm adding that D in there, and that will be the next note because it's G, D, B, D, D, G, B, D. And the next note will be that G. So. You can do it that way as well. Later on, you'll learn different ways to hold those chords that'll make playing those notes a lot easier. You'll be learning some inversions as well on this course later on. Okay? So any other questions?
It's not really a question, but maybe you might be able to help out somebody.
Okay.
So Chris said that he has arthritis in his thumb, and because he has arthritis in his thumb, when he tries to hold stuff down, he loses the grip, and it makes it even harder to do the pinky exercises.
Right.
Yeah, and he says he's he's stretching it and working on it, but it's just
yeah, that is a bit tough, and it's kind of I mentioned last week to kind of get to know your own range of motions, and if if you're doing the warm-ups, and if it's the hammer-ons and pull-offs and stuff are a new thing to you, it might take a little bit of time for it to to just come as second nature. So it might hurt at first, especially for somebody who has arthritis, but just work on it really slow, and eventually build up to that. I've known guys like Trey Terada. I've known guys like Peter Moon who also have arthritis, but yet they can still reach those notes. I mean, they already possess the muscle memory to do that. So if you just kind of build up on your muscle memory and knowing your own range of motion, maybe just do it a few times, but don't do it until it hurts. Do it until maybe you might feel when it's about to hurt, and when that kind of comes up, then stop and do something else. But every now and then, just kind of not push yourself, but bring yourself up to that limit where you can, and then and then you can go from there. But it's all about just little bit of progression, and eventually you'll get there. So everyone is going to be different, and not everyone's going to get this thing in one day or in 1 week, and that's why we're doing goals. And even though we do Ukulele 102 every week, it doesn't really have to be a weekly thing for you. If it takes you a couple weeks to understand a concept and to pull off the exercises, by all means, take the whole 2 weeks to learn it. As long as you're making progress, is what we're is what we want to see from everybody. Okay, so don't push yourself so that it hurts and aggravates your arthritis, but just take little bits of little micro progress.
And I think you're doing you're using your pinky to do the extensions for the arpeggios.
Yes.
But it's not always gonna be your pinky, right? It can be your
it can be other notes. Like for example, that C one that I did. So instead of using my pinky on that on the E, so you can use your ring finger. Okay, and with your F1, you can use your ring finger as well. Okay, so but the exercise that we provided last week will help out a lot. Do the worm, do the spider, do the shake, but just figure out your own range of motion, and figure out where you can go until you aggravate your arthritis. Okay, so you don't want to aggravate it, but you want to go up to the point where it's almost there and just kind of stop, rest. So as long as you're making little micro progressions.
We talk about too, I know before we talked about taking something that you're having trouble with, and then you can also like kind of shelf it, you know, like just say like, oh, I'll come back to this later. And then that's where it's like, maybe you can't play it with your pinky right now, but then you can play it with your ring finger, and then just trying it again with your pinky later on.
Okay. So. Any other questions?
I think
Todd in the chat was saying that he noticed you were using a different finger on the right hand to do that.
To do the into out.
No. When you're doing the hammer-ons and pulls, you weren't, because you just said that you were using your thumb and pointer for the into out, but then for the hammer-ons,
So we also explained this on Ukulele 101. When you're doing your into out technique, you can either do it with your thumb and pointer, or you can do it with the middle finger. So that's a good, it's a good thing that you brought it up again. For those folks who didn't see Ukulele 101, you can use your thumb, pointer, and middle for the into out technique, where the thumb would do C and G, pointer would do E, middle would do A. So it would be like this. Or you can do it with just thumb and pointer. Okay. All right. So that's basically all it is. I'm using a different technique for the into out, but it's pretty much the same, just adding one more finger in there. But great question. So just in case you folks didn't watch 101, that's exactly what I'm doing. So if you're like, why is he using another finger for that? That's why.
There's like advantages to both, right? Like both different styles, but it's kind of like, at this point, it's more personal preference, what you want to do with, or what you want to use to pick.
Yeah. Okay, so let's move on. Using arpeggios for finger style picking. So this is kind of what those people are looking for. What we want to do, now that we know how to do arpeggios, and we know how to extend arpeggios, now let's put that into application. Like, how would we use that knowledge for the stuff that we already play? So what we want to do is we want to identify the other chords, and you'll see why. What other chords are you playing with the initial chords? So most songs are not just going to be just the F. So you're not just going to be doing the arpeggio on F throughout the whole song. It's gonna come with other with other chords as well. So for example, the rest of the song has G minor and C7. So if I'm in F and the rest of the song has G minor and C7, we can take a look at all the notes that is being played, not just on the F but also on the G minor and the C7. So let's break it down, shall we? So from F, we're playing 2 0 1 0. For the G minor, we're playing 0 2 3 1, and for the C7, we're playing 0 0 0 1. Okay. Now, on the A string, what were the notes that we were playing? We were playing on the A string. We're going to be playing 0 1 and 3 because that's our F extension, or F arpeggio extension. So on the A string, we're playing 0 1 and 3 frets. On the E string, we're playing 0 1 and 3. And why? How did I come to that conclusion? When we play F, we're playing the open A string. We're playing G minor. We're playing the 1 fret. And then our arpeggio, extended arpeggio, leads us to this open C. So on the A string, we're playing 0, 1, and 3. On the E string, on the F, we're playing the 1st fret. G minor, we're playing the 3rd fret. C7, we're playing the open fret. So we have 0, 1, and 3. So on the A string, we're playing 0, 1, and 3. On the E string, we're playing 0, 1, and 3. On the C string, we're playing 0 on the F chord, 2 on the G minor chord, and 0 on the C7 chord. On our G string, we're playing 2 on the F chord, and 0 on the G minor chord, and then 0 on the C7 chord. Alright, now that we have all the players, these are the notes that are safe for us to play. So you have 0 2, 0 2, 0 1 3, 0 1 3. Those are all safe notes if we're playing those 3 chords. So F, G minor, C7, and F. Now, we can use those alternate notes that we just figured out as extensions to our chord. So for example, if I'm finger picking on the F, since on my C string 0 and 2 are being played, I can actually add the 2 to my F chord. So all I'm doing is I'm adding that C string 2nd fret to my already F arpeggio. So now I'm adding that extension of the arpeggio. So I'm adding the C string 2nd fret and also adding the extension. Even if I'm just doing the regular into out picking, all I did was just hammered on that C string 2nd fret. Now, let's use that on the E string. I know on the E string, I'm allowed to play 0, 1, and 3. So maybe since I'm playing my F chord, I can hammer onto the 3 if I want. So whenever you hear, a riff like all they're doing is basically taking the notes that that you can play with, with that chord. So if we're doing F, G minor, C7, F. So play that for me, Aaron. So Aaron's going to be playing F, G minor, C7, and F. So back to F, G minor, C7, and F. So here you'll hear Aaron play it. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna add some of those notes that were safe. So now that sounds extremely fancy. Like what I was just doing sounds extremely fancy. But all I'm doing is I'm finger picking on my right hand and I'm adding every single one of those notes that I hit were the notes that we specified right here. So all I have to do is kind of just visualize the other chords that that I will be playing within my song. So for example, if your song comprised of, let's just do maybe a 2-chord song. A and B minor. Play A and B minor for me. So A, B minor. Down, down, up, down, up, down, up, down. So here's the safe note. And I can cross between any one of those notes whenever I want. Watch. And all I did was every now and then I would maybe hammer on or maybe even play any one of the strings on the 2nd fret because my B minor chord are just notes on the 2nd fret. So what I'm doing is I'm doing my arpeggio on the A and every now and then hitting a note from the E string, A string, or C string on the 2nd fret, just like how it would on my B minor 7 chord. So I can have combinations like So it's already starting to sound a lot more complex than it looks, or than what we're doing. We're just adding the notes that are safe to play and that are given to us by the other chords. So another one is if we add the extensions. So a chord extension, like I mentioned earlier, on an A chord is that C sharp. Okay, so you can have a riff like. all I'm doing is I'm playing that A string 4th fret for that C sharp, and I'm just doing my my pull off, and then doing an descending arpeggio, going down on that A chord. And then I'm going up. I'm gonna ascend, but I'm gonna add that C string 2nd frets to my ascension. So instead of going, I'm hitting that 2nd fret. And I got myself a nice Hawaiian sounding riff, and all it was is just taking the extensions and the notes that are safe to us and mixing them together and coming up with a nice little melody line. Okay? So once again, you want to identify the other chords that you'll be playing throughout the song, and those chords will give you hints as to which notes you can be playing alongside your arpeggio. So we're kind of playing the arpeggio, but we're stepping outside of the box every now and then to add little melody lines onto that. So when the next time you play a song like Guava Jam, you now know that all it is you're playing in C and you're adding that, because the other notes that we're going to be playing, G7, right? So for example, the next chord is G7. Now in G7, we have this D note. And where does that D note appear on our melody line? Right here. So we have the E, which is part of the C chord arpeggio, then to the D note, which is allowed to us because of this D on the G7 chord, and of course the C arpeggio. So I can go here because it's part of my G7 chord, and then just play the whole G7 arpeggio on top of that. So when breaking that song down that way, you can kind of see how how complex it sounds, but in the execution is not that hard. Is not as complex as it sounds. When you break it down that way, when you're using arpeggios and you're like, okay, well, that sounds like an arpeggio, sounds like it's gonna go down or sounds like it's gonna go up. He's playing notes that that's gonna go up, and you can pretty much hear the difference between finger style picking and flat style picking. So if I'm doing flat style picking, it's gonna sound something like. And flat style picking is mostly sequential. We're going up. We're playing the notes going up, instead of playing the arpeggios, which is the chord notes. All right. Any questions so far? I know that was kind of a lot to take in. Questions?
I think you made a good point, where I think a lot of people, when they come into playing, they think they want to play, or they think soloing.
Yeah.
So they try to play a flat picking, and they play a straight flat picking, which is fine.
Yeah.
But then it is like you said earlier with Eric Clapton and the Beatles and James Taylor. If you listen to their playing, what makes their playing so
melodic.
And is the arpeggios, right? Is what they add to their songs.
Yeah, because they'll be playing the actual melody line, but then behind it is the arpeggio, so it gives you that kind of harp feel. So their guitar turns out kind of like a harp. A lot of piano players do this as well. When you hear that kind of piano line, I mean, personally, I do this a lot. Okay, so if you've ever heard any one of my albums, you hear a lot of arpeggios. For example, "Uke on a Stick." "Uke on a Stick" is, and that is an arpeggio, a D minor arpeggio. But just up here. Then the next one. And it's just all arpeggios going down. So it's very, very, very important to kind of understand what they are and understand how to use them if you want to be proficient at finger style picking.
Yeah, I think, or you're telling me that you wrote that song because you heard Zelda, right? Like and
Yeah,
they use
yeah.
arpeggios too.
Yeah.
So
So in Zelda, you have, you know, like whenever you get a treasure, you get. Or something like that. So, you know, I wanted to kind of recreate that. And I'm like, what is that? And, you know, I was like, I was like, that's just a series of arpeggios going up.
Chords that are spelled out.
Are just spelled out. So, although it sounds really fancy, you're like, but that's all it is.
I mean, like, but then if you try to play it as like just chords, like just strumming it, I mean, like if you, it does like make a difference, right? So Angie was saying, is the right hand picking pattern consistent, or are you changing it according to the chord?
You are changing it according to the notes that you're playing. So I mean, if you're doing into out picking and then you add an additional note in there, if you add an additional note and you don't play that note, it'll be you know, you'll be kind of playing that note or fingering that note in vain. So when I do, you know, the into out picking, and when I introduce another note, I am going to make sure that I play that note with it too. Okay, so that's a very good question. So, you know, when I do, for example, I'm gonna add the C string 2nd fret. So that's normal, and then I'm gonna add the C string 2nd fret now. So I added it on, so I kind of extended the arpeggio, making room for me to play that C string 2nd fret. So here it is slow. So all it is taking your pointer finger, middle finger, whatever finger you might want to use, and just make sure that if you're gonna extend the arpeggio, or if you're gonna go outside the arpeggio box, then you can that you're going to be playing those notes so you can hear those extensions and those extra notes that you're playing. So a lot of this, so people ask me, like, you know, how do you get so good with the right hand when you're doing fingerstyle picking? The trick is to kind of play by feel. Honestly, it's just feel, you know, like feel it out. And when you add things, you know, on your left hand, make sure that your the corresponding fingers on your right hand follow suit. Okay, that's really all it is. Just making sure that you're always on beats. You're on, you know, you're in rhythm. So when you hear me play, there's a certain rhythm to it. There's a certain beat to it. I'm still following that beat when I'm adding these notes in. I'm not speeding up, I'm not slowing down, I'm keeping the rhythm steady with my right hand, but I'm adding extra notes in there. So
I think for people who are starting out too, they're gonna be uncoordinated with their right hand.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, and it just takes a little bit.
Yeah, and it's gonna feel slow and it's gonna feel like disjointed.
Yeah.
But then just like the more you do it, the more comfortable you get and the faster.
Yeah. So I would suggest a lot of people to just kind of play your normal, you know, your normal chords like F, G minor, C7, C, G, D, whatever it may be, and just maybe add one thing. Yeah, and then add 2 things, and then add 3 things. The trick is always, like I said earlier, making, you know, small little improvements, making small progressions, and eventually leading towards to your goal. And that's why we're putting such emphasis on the goal, is because we want you guys to have a clear view of what it is that you need to achieve, or what it is you're striving towards, or what it is your goal, what your goal is. So you want to be able to reach those goals. And if you're just, if you're adding one note in there that's extra, you've already made a little bit of progress. You maybe add another one, you get another progress, and so on and so forth, trying to meet that goal of being proficient with fingerstyle picking.
So Chris said that it sounds like Guava Jam may be a good song to practice arpeggio.
Yes,
picking.
yes, yeah. Arpeggios and fingerstyle in general. So if you want to do fingerstyle picking, check out Guava Jam. So it might be a little bit advanced, but that's, that could also be a goal that you can work towards.
I think, yeah, and I think too, it's like it can be any song that you're familiar with the chords, right?
Yeah.
And then that's what you just broke down, is that you just take the notes from the chords and then you try and play them.
Yeah.
And we have like all the play-alongs, and then we have Friday jams too, where it's like if you guys are playing the strumming the chords, they can just listen and try to play the chords using arpeggios.
Yes.
So
yes.
it's just take what you already know already. And
Yeah.
you can start applying
And
it
just
right
apply.
away.
Cool. Anything else you guys want to add before we close this out? So here, we did the application. During the fingerstyle picking, you can add the notes from the other chords, and also less is more. What I mean by that is, you didn't see me add all the notes in there, but I just added notes that were appropriate and that kind of sounded a little bit melodic. Because I can go to the 3rd fret or to the 1st fret doesn't mean that I have to. Okay, it's just adding little things in there. So less is more. If you want to just add the, when we did that riff with. I can go to the E string 2nd fret, to the A string 2nd fret, and open, or maybe a G string 4th fret for the full B minor chord. I can go through all of those. But that riff is so effective with just very little notes. Okay. Next up. So, this will be week 2's homework or week 2's exercises. It might be a little bit small for you guys to see, but for those UU Plus members, we do have a printout of this available that you guys can download over on UU Plus. All right, so I'm gonna go over it really quick. So the A exercise is basically just an F chord. So you're doing 0, 1, 2, and then you're doing 3, and then pull off to the 0. And then 1 on the E string, then 0. That's the first part, so it goes like this. Next part is 1, then hammer onto the 3rd, then 0 on the A string, E string 3rd fret, then 1. So it sounds like this. So you can use a ring finger or a pinky finger, whichever you prefer. Repeat. And then strum. So one more time. Okay, for those of you UU Plus subscribers, we also have play-alongs for these exercises, so you can play along and kind of see if you can match what I'm doing. All right, and we do it in 90 beats per minute, so it's not too slow, not too fast. Next up, B exercise sounds like this. That's the riff that I was playing the entire time. So we're playing C string 1st fret. Then A string 4th fret, pull off to the 0. Then E string 0. Then C string 1st fret, hammer onto the 2nd fret. Then open E and A. Then back to the E, open. Then C string 1st fret, and repeat. Okay, and last but not least, we have this nice little arpeggio exercise for you that goes like this. So it's the C, this B flat kind of C chord shape, or B flat chord shape of the C. So it goes like this: 4th fret on the C string, so played with our chord shape there. Then 3 on the E string, 5 on the G string. And then 7 right here. So we're using our pinky on that 7. So then to the 3rd fret. Then 3rd fret on the E string. And then open C string. And we're playing that F chord next. 1, 2. So it goes like this. And then we're going to play a G chord, so 2, 3, 0, 5. We're going to do the extension there. Then 2, 3, then 0, 0, 0, 3. So it goes like this. One more time. So those are your 3 exercises for this week. Those are your goals. See if you can do that, and also you can set personal goals for yourself. So the goals for our weekly goals here in Ukulele Underground University, Ukulele 102. They're just the goals to kind of do this, to understand what that week's about, and to do the exercises. But in order to really progress as an ukulele player, you want to be able to set personal goals for yourself. So you might want to do this, and you might want to take what you're playing already and apply the knowledge, all the knowledge you learned on today's lesson. All right, and as per usual, over on UU Plus, we have these things for printout, and we also have a forum that you can post your videos to. So you can take a video of yourself playing these exercises, and we can come in and we can kind of give you some advice or give you some pointers and tips on how you can play that better, or if you're doing it really good, we'll give you some encouragement. So that's over on UU Plus. You can post it there and we'll give you some feedback. All right. And also on UU Plus, we have live one-on-one coaching. So if you're having a hard time with this or anything else over on our site, or just with the ukulele in general, you can do a one-on-one session with me, and I will be kind of like your private instructor, and I will kind of show you how to get back on the right track. All right, you guys want to add anything else?
Some people are asking about the homework, and you can find the homework already in the forum.
Yes.
And then,
so over in the UU Plus forum, there is already a thread that you guys can watch the play-alongs, right? Watch the play-alongs and also download the PDFs.
Yep.
Yeah.
And then we also put up the replays usually tomorrow, sometime in the next week. But then I'll try to get the play-alongs and the PDFs up on Wednesdays from now on, so they can get it a little bit earlier too.
Great. So that you guys can kind of download it. So when you watch the video or the lesson, that you can have that thing in front of you.
You can follow along.
Yeah, follow along.
So, Yep.
Cool. Aaron, you want to add anything else?
No.
All right, guys. So this has been Ukulele Underground University, Ukulele 102, week number 2. Next week on Ukulele Underground University, Ukulele 102, we're going to be dealing with some scales. So for those of you folks who are like, I don't want to do scales, might be the same people who are like, I don't want to do arpeggios. But once you see what arpeggios can do, you're like, maybe I should learn some arpeggios. Next week, maybe we should learn some scales. So I'm going to be showing you folks scales, and I'm going to present it like this, where you can kind of understand and you can apply it to your ukulele. So with we're going to do a little bit of music theory, but for the most part, I want to keep it as music theory free as possible. Okay, and I know that's a bit hard with scales, but we're gonna try our best. All right, so we'll see you folks next week here on Ukulele 102. This is Aldrin Guerrero, joined by Aaron Knockmore and Kai Fergan. We'll see you folks next time. Aloha.